The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar titled Better Together, brought to you by EPM Live and K2. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us this morning, this afternoon, and this evening. We realize that we have folks here in the U.S. and folks in Europe and parts of Asia, so we certainly appreciate all of you taking some time out here to join us today. Before we begin, I'd like to touch on just a few housekeeping items. Today's presentation is a live broadcast. It is being recorded and will be available online in 24 hours. All phone lines are muted, and we are going to use the Q&A panel for any questions that you might have during the webinar session. And towards the end, we'll also open up the Q&A panel and address any questions that we may not have gotten to during the presentation. So if you have questions, we encourage you to use the Q&A panel, and either myself or Michelle we'll get to those during the presentation. If not, then we'll start the Q&A session with questions that are left in the Q&A panel. Real quick here, as far as introductions go, we have two speakers for today. We have Michelle Salazar, technical specialist with K2, who is with us. She is going to be doing a demonstration along with myself on the K2 and the EPM Live solution. And then we have myself, Matt Wilson, EPM Live Director, Partner Strategy. Now, we realize that some of you are K2 clients and some of you are EPM Live clients, and we have a mix of customers and prospects that don't really know a whole lot about either one of us. So we figured we'd start off with introductions and tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do. I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit more about EPM Live if you're not already familiar with us. EPM Live is a SharePoint-based project and portfolio management solution, and we've been in the project portfolio management business now for just over 13 years. And our focus is really developing and building project portfolio management capabilities on the SharePoint platform. Our product today is sold in over 30 countries around the world. We have a network of over 150 partners, and from a technology perspective, our product supports both SharePoint 2007 as well as SharePoint 2010. Now, from a business perspective, what we focus on here at EPM Live is really helping organizations achieve more, and we do that through four main pillars. We do that by helping organizations use SharePoint to manage their resources more effectively, in essence, providing the right people at the right time with the right skill sets. We help them gain control over their costs and help them effectively plan and monitor their project costs and minimize overspending. We also focus on helping them execute and deliver and improve overall project and team productivity and performance. And last but not least, we help, through our capabilities and through the use of SharePoint, we help organizations improve overall business performance and essentially help them make timely and more accurate business decisions. Now, the reason we're here with you today is because we recently conducted a study with EPM Live clients and prospective clients, and we asked them, of these four categories here, or of these four areas, we asked them to rank in order of importance the initiatives and the disciplines that were most important to them. And the response was pretty convincing. As you can see here, portfolio management, just over 30% of the respondents said was their, they ranked highest on their list. The second highest was risk management. Third highest was resource management and cost management, and it was pretty much a break-even between cost and resource management. And what we'd like to do today is talk with you a little bit more about this study, more specifically around portfolio management capabilities as well as resource management capabilities using the EPM Live and the K2 solution. Now, as a follow-on to this study, we actually asked these prospects and these respondents to provide more information on their key concerns in each one of these areas. And essentially, in the portfolio management area, it essentially came down to two key points. Most organizations were concerned, or most of the clients that responded with portfolio management being at the highest at their list, responded with being concerned about alignment with corporate goals and objectives. And they were most concerned about subjective decision making. In other words, they were looking to implement more objective decision making into the portfolio management decision making process. Now, from a risk management perspective, the respondents essentially told us that they wanted to proactively mitigate any risks, and they also wanted to reduce the impact that these risks had on overall costs and schedule performance. And what we're going to do today, both Michelle and I, is talk with you a little bit more about how EPM Live and K2 will address the portfolio management concerns and the risk management concerns of those customers, and for most of you even here today on this webcast. Now, achieving portfolio management as well as risk management hasn't always been easy for clients, and even for, I think for you, you would probably agree that there are a lot of challenges. Some of the key challenges that we see are the lack of visibility into competing priorities resulting in misaligned projects, meaning that the executive stakeholders that are involved in this decision-making process don't necessarily have the visibility they need to be able to understand, how these projects sort of fit into the overall scope of the business and whether or not they compete with other priorities. The other challenge is the decision-making process is actually quite subjective, so there really isn't necessarily an objective way for them to be able to say, yes, this project looks great, let's move forward with it, or this is a project that doesn't add any value, let's consider canceling that and moving resources to other higher value-added projects. What we want to do today is show you between the EPM Live and the K2 solution how key stakeholders like yourself can make accurate business decisions regarding projects and resources, gain visibility into competing priorities and misaligned projects, and have a more objective approach to making those decisions. From a risk management perspective, some of the challenges that we see with our clients is that they have lack of visibility into risk and issue impacts, resulting in a reactive risk management approach. In other words, there are risks, inherent risks that every organization takes on when they implement these projects or they embark on projects, but not everyone on these teams and not everyone on the leadership committee has visibility in what those risks and issues are. In addition to that, they're unable to quickly implement any risk management best practices that they might have today or might have learned from other previous projects. And what we want to do here, in addition to the portfolio management capabilities, we want to show you some of the risk management capabilities here in addressing these challenges, and more specifically, how project owners and project stakeholders can proactively mitigate all risks that are associated with these projects. So that's what Michelle and I are going to do today. But before we go ahead and do that, I'd like to ask Michelle to come back on and or to join us and tell us a little bit more about K2, as well as give us an overview on what we can expect to see in the actual demonstration of EPM Live and K2. So with that, Michelle, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Matt. Again, I'm Michelle Salazar, Technical Specialist here with K2, and very happy to be joining Matt today, EPM Live, to show you how EPM Live and K2 together can leverage that SharePoint environment to manage your project portfolios. So before I get into the solution that Matt and I put together for today, I just want to quickly introduce you to K2. K2 is essentially a platform for automating process-driven applications. Now, we are a global company with over 3,000 customers in more than 54 countries worldwide. We've been around since around 2000, and our headquarters is currently located in Redmond, Washington. Now, K2 is built on top of the Microsoft platform, and obviously we have a very deep partnership and integration with Microsoft, specifically around that SharePoint offering. And we are proud to be awarded Best of Tech Ed last year for efforts in integrating with SharePoint. So something we're pretty proud of this year, and happy to be joining Matt around that SharePoint offering and portfolio management. So that's a little bit about K2. Now, why K2? So as I mentioned, K2 is a platform. It's much more than just a pretty designer that allows you to create blocks and lines and connect pieces together. It's more about integrating people, processes, and line of business information. Our software platform makes it easy to build workflows and process-driven applications that increase business efficiency, and so that's really what we're all about. We enable business people with visual tools and technical people with tools that they know. Everything in K2 is very visual, declarative, reusable, and intuitive. In addition, K2 bridges and extends Microsoft and even other technologies that that you may have in your organization and your infrastructure. And finally, we realize it's not just reporting, it's interacting with the business. Therefore, K2 includes a full audit and reporting capabilities toolkit to help you audit, report, and improve processes. So that's just a little bit about K2 and why we do that, or what K2 is and why. But so how do we do that? K2 offers multiple designers targeted toward those users who are actually building the workflows. So those could be business users, business analysts, or even developers. 3 different designers for that. K2 Designer for SharePoint. So this is actually surfaced inside of SharePoint, very graphical, very visual, allowing you to create those workflows. For someone who's a little bit more advanced in building workflows, you might want to step out of that SharePoint environment and go into what we call K2 Studio. It's our standalone designer that allows you to build much more advanced processes connecting SharePoint and your infrastructure together. And then finally, the K2 Developer for those technical folks that like to build inside of Visual Studio. You still get that nice graphical effect with K2 templates installed inside of Visual Studio. So again, depending on your skill set, you'll choose the tools available to you. But again, it's a tooling. It's not process specific, so you're able to build any process for your organization. Today we're talking about portfolio management. Tomorrow we might be talking about accounts payable or employee or customer onboarding. K2 also comes with a rich set of tooling to manage the process lifecycle. This could be through user security, incident management, and even process versioning. So again, being able to manage that process lifecycle, it's more than just that design experience, it's that full platform. And finally, automating processes is one thing, but tracking and knowing what is going on with those processes is just as important. So we offer a number of out-of-the-box tools to help you visualize your processes. Now let's talk about the scenario we're going to walk through today where project meets process and show you how we can initiate a K2 process to assist the project management around people collaborating on project tasks. We'll start with a request for a new project. And in this scenario, we'd like to compare the budget against that of similar project types. We'll go through our first user. We'll also want to be able to evaluate the risk given that budget. So if that budget is beyond the average budget, we want to make sure we can route it to another user. Finally, we also want to allow for an executive decision to be made based on that budget and that risk. So again, tasks being routed dependent on items being entered by different users. The end result is that all stakeholders have visibility into those key project factors and can make more accurate decisions. In this scenario, we'll also see how combining K2 and EPM Live can allow project owners to proactively mitigate risks associated to the project instead of being reactive when risks arise. So here are the process diagrams that we used to create the demo that we're about to walk through. The first for that project request approval. This is the actual process that we built up inside of K2, aligning with EPM Live. You can see it's a customizable drag and drop process flow, automatic role assignment, and again, you can see the different areas where we have transitions if the budget is greater than the average budget. Otherwise, we go down the happy path. Let's just go ahead and create that project template. Process notifications, so you can actually receive an email and automatically approve that process or approve that task from within your email as well. From the risk management perspective, the second part of our demonstration, again, the similar customizable drag and drop process flows. And every site that gets created by K2 is automatically workflow and integrated and using K2 and EPM Live templates, allowing you to do this, which allows us for that automated risk assessment based on different KPIs. So we're calculating some risk in K2, and based on that risk, we'll route it to the appropriate users. If additional effort is required for that risk, you can submit a change request automatically, or even kick off a brand new process to assess the risk and impact of that risk on that project. So again, that's what we're going to show you today. So project request approval, and then we'll walk into risk management. I'm just going to change screens here and get into my experience here. So the page that you're seeing now is our dashboard, if you will, our work engine homepage that allows us to see everything related to what we are doing with processes, whether that's project request process, portfolio processes, as well as any other process we might be involved in within your organization. So again, it can be just process or portfolio management as well as other processes in your organization. We see the K2 work list that allows us to receive and see tasks associated to us, so any tasks that have been assigned to us. We also see a quick little out-of-the-box reporting web part that shows us any processes that are currently in flight and the instance count, as well as some EPM Live reporting statistics on projects, budget types, etc. And Matt is actually going to go through a little bit more of the EPM Live portion and what you're seeing around EPM Live here. But today I want to go ahead and kick off a new request as part of our project request approval. So I'm logged in as Steve Masters, and Steve is actually going to kick off a new project request. So inside of EPM Live's Project Center or Request Center, we're going to go ahead and kick off a new request. Now, these forms are actually customizable, which means you can put information in that you find necessary. The nice thing about this is once this project is created, K2 will capture that data that's being entered and transfer that over into the new project that gets created. For this portion, we're going to actually create a support system upgrade. We'll do a nice little description here. And then quick benefits. Other options we can choose here are the state of our project request, which is obviously going to start with being a request. What type of project this is going to be. We'll make it an enhancement. The initiative is to improve efficiency. And then we'll go ahead and set some ownership on who this project and who are the responsible stakeholders for this project. My executive sponsor will be Adam. Business sponsor Steve. And again, we can fill these out as we go through the steps or fill it out all up front, or even have K2 automatically determine who should be routed scenarios based on different project types. So again, this is one form or one example of how we want to run this process. You can obviously make it more real-time where K2 can query different line of business systems or SharePoint lists to determine who to send tasks to. We'll give a duration for this project. Once that's completed, upon submission or save, the project request will get kicked off. So we can see we have a project request in pending status, and it's currently in progress. So as my first step of my portal or my processing, I'm going to log in as Mr. Bishop here and go ahead and action his task. Now Steve could also receive an email, and in that email would list his appropriate actions associated to this task. And I probably need to put the appropriate. And on Scott's website or portal site, he sees a different version. He sees his work, so any work that's assigned to him. And again, this is a different area inside of EPM Live that allows you to see work assigned to you. You can also see that we now have an item on our K2 work list that shows we have an action item or a task assigned to us for a workflow, so a project request approval for our support system upgrade. Now the K2 work list allows us to do quite a lot of functionality. We can batch action different items, so if we don't want to look at the item, we can go ahead and just batch action that. We have the ability to redirect this task, so maybe somebody else needs to action this task on our behalf. Let's go ahead and redirect that to them. Additionally, we can delegate that task, and if we delegate that task, this allows us a little bit more flexibility in how we deliver these tasks. So I'll just choose a user here. And by adding that user, I'm going to give access to my task to Steve Masters. But you can see that I can be granular in the type of access I want to give him. Maybe our signature needs to be on all approvals, so it makes no sense to allow him to approve a task on my behalf. Instead, I'm going to have him have the ability to open up this task, take a look at it, determine if he can help with it. If not, let's go ahead and decline that. So again, once I click OK, we'll still see the task on my task list as Scott because I'm still responsible for that. I still have approved and decline access. If I were to open up Steve's browser at this point, he'd also see that new item on his task list, but with the ability to just decline it. Lastly, I'm going to show you the process flow, and this is one of the out-of-the-box reports within K2 that allows you to visualize that process as an end user. So we can see that entire process as it's running, real time. I can see the steps that have already been taken, where we're currently sitting on that step. Additionally, I can click inside of each option, see the different steps that are to be taken, any available participants, and if you remember, I assigned it to Steve Masters as well. So K2 is capturing everything that's occurring in your process. And again, it's more than just reporting, it's about interacting with the business. Once this person, whomever it is, makes an action or takes action, we'll also see that show up on our action list. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and leave this process step open, or this process flow open, and allow us to continue managing this task. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this work list. Now once I open this up, we'll see a nice InfoPath form. Now this InfoPath form is something that, again, is very customizable, and you can use an InfoPath form, a SharePoint list form, a K2 form, even a mobile form to pull and present data to your end users for each particular step. So you can see the different items available for this project. Let's go ahead and set a start date for this. Maybe we want it completed by April or June 1st. We can see our different approvers associated to this. And again, this is very customizable. I can go ahead and change one of those approvers if necessary. But the real thing I want to show here is the project comparisons, and this is really where K2 and EPM Live come together. We can see that K2 is actually tracking and pulling the strategic alignment. So we pulled an average of similar project types for that strategic alignment. We've given it a 5 as a default, so we can change that as necessary. We also see for similar project types, the duration is 120. For average project type, it's 169. Now the point we're going to put here is the budget. What's the budget for this project? And the nice thing is that I can actually see the different budgets associated to different projects of similar types. I can get an average of that. And this will help make those decisions a little bit easier so you can visualize everything on one page. So I'm going to go ahead and go above that threshold so we can see our task walk through our next step. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and prove that. So Scott has actioned his task successfully. We'll also see that task now removed from his task list. Now I still have that process flow up, and you can see that it went from business sponsor to now finance sponsor. So it hit the rule that the budget was greater than the average budget. So that was something K2 calculated for us and determined which routing scenario. So all the end user had to do was approve it. K2 did the process of tracking that average budget and sending it on to the next step. So if I go ahead and log into my next user, and that's going to actually be Steve Masters again as my business sponsor. And actually, that's not Steve Masters. So now we're at the finance sponsor. If you remember, I initially assigned this back to Steve as part of the declinability, but that was only at the business sponsor level. In this case, we're at another level, so I can go ahead and open up this task. And in this task, I'll see a different view. And again, if you have comments that you need to be adding to this, that's very capable as well. It would just be a different field on your form to add those comments. So at this point, our finance sponsor is supposed to manage the risk. So depending on that budget, obviously it got routed to us because that budget is greater, we can now assess the risk. Let's go ahead and give it a 3 and go above that threshold and get to the executive approver. And again, at this point, this is what an end user experiences when they go through a K2 process or as they interact with the K2 process. They are routed tasks associated to them based on different things that are occurring in our process. You can see it quickly moved from finance sponsor down to executive. And again, K2 managed and took a look at that at risk. It was greater than the average risk, so we went down to the executive sponsor. Lastly, and just to quickly get through this, I'm going to go open up Adam Bar. Now, how did we know that Adam was supposed to action this task? If we weren't sure, we can go in and look in our processing steps as well. If I double-click here, I can see my participants, and indeed it's Adam. Additionally, as I'm looking through this process, I want to know different metadata that's being captured by K2. So I can say who's taking the longest for this particular step. You can get some nice user performance statistics on your processes. And again, this is from an end user perspective. As I go through this, I'll show you what more of an administrative functionality has within K2 as well. So let's just quickly go ahead and action our task as Adam here. In this case, I'm not going to open up my task. I'm just going to approve it from my work list here. So you can approve that task, and everything is completed for that process. So we're able to visualize and make decisions based on the average budgets and risks associated to different project types. Now the final step of our process is to create that project center, so to actually create that EPM Live project template so that we can start managing our process or our project, adding risks, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and close down this window since we've seen our process go completely through. And now to double check and see that project that's been created, I'm going to route over to my project center. Now in my project center, I should see my support system upgrade. And indeed, I have a support system upgrade being created, my project site. It's empty at the moment because now we can start managing this project as we need to. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over actually to Matt again so he can talk a little bit more. Now that we have that project site created, what can we do in this environment?
All right, wonderful. Matt? Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. That was great. So just to bring everyone up to speed on where we're at in this whole process, what we've actually done is we've taken a new project proposal or a new request or a new idea or a new initiative, and through using the K2 capabilities combined with EPM Live, we've essentially facilitated a workflow and approval process directly within SharePoint and directly within EPM Live. So where we're at right now is we actually have a project workspace that has been created because this project has been approved. It's gone through the various stakeholders. They've been able to objectively assess the key metrics on that project, the budget and risk being one of those key metrics. And they all agreed that this is definitely a project they want to move forward with. So now that it's actually a bona fide project, at this point we want to go ahead and assign resources and start building out our project plans, key milestones, and creating a more refined budget and cost plan. So what I want to do now is just touch on just some of the higher level capabilities that we can offer those clients that may not necessarily be using EPM Live today, and sort of explain how some of the other features that are available to you within our particular product set. So real quickly here at the top navigation bar here, you'll notice, I'm just going to go back to the home page here, you'll notice that we have a variety of different areas that each end user can actually get into. Depending on your roles and your permissions, if you are looking to manage your work or you want to have a central place to get all of your responsibilities and or maybe even track your time, we have what's called the My Work Center. The My Work Center is basically a central work repository that presents all the tasks and all the responsibilities assigned to any individual. And because I'm logged into Steve Masters, when I click on that, it's going to present to me everything that I'm responsible for, not only in the workflow process, if there are any new requests or any risks that I have to be able to take care of. It also gives me a list of all the tasks and other items and work items that I'm also responsible for. Now, in addition to that, it gives me more detailed information about each one of my responsibilities. What kind of a work is it, or what kind of task is it? What's the overall status of this as it relates to the schedule? When does it need to start, or when does it start, and when does it need to finish? How much work is assigned to it? What's the status, and what's the overall percent complete? And which project or initiative is this aligned with or associated with? Now, we can very easily report progress by using the editable control that we built into the SharePoint or list item functionality here. And as you can see here, we can adjust the percent complete, although I'm not going to go ahead and do that. It is already 100% complete, but I think you get the idea here. So as a team member, I have one place that I can come to essentially get all the information that I need about my responsibilities. Now, we also have the ability to support timesheet functionality. So within the EPM Live product itself, not only do you have the ability to report progress or percent complete on any given task or work assignment, we also have the ability to track time in a time-phased manner and on a day-by-day basis. So in other words, not only can you report the percent complete, but we also have the ability to report hours. And within the hours, we can also indicate what's billable and what's not billable for those organizations that need to be able to track that level of granularity, right? These timesheets are weekly, and what's really nice about this is my timesheet administrator can essentially lock or unlock or approve or reject any timesheet entry that I make. And you can see that I can't actually make any changes to this because this timesheet has already been submitted. However, if I go to a timesheet reporting period that is unlocked and unsubmitted, I can very easily update my tasks here and report my progress and my the hours on each task I work on. Okay. We also have the ability to add additional work items. So if for some if you contribute to other tasks that you're not assigned to and you need to be able to account for your time on that task, you can easily do that. And then we have what's called other timesheets, where you can actually delegate your timesheet to someone else to complete on your behalf, or other folks can delegate timesheet responsibilities to you and you can complete on their behalf. So there's quite a bit of functionality there. Now, in addition to that, we also give our executive stakeholders a central place where they can access all project-related information. So this is an area I think you all are familiar with. Michelle took us through actually creating a new project here. And this essentially is the central repository for all things that are project and work related. So as an executive stakeholder, for anyone that's looking to get visibility into every single initiative or project they're currently working on today, we present that information in a single list or in a single list view. Now, what's also really nice about this is EPM Live is fully integrated with SharePoint, which means that we leverage all the native facilities within the SharePoint platform. So we're not an add-in. We actually are built on and in the SharePoint platform. So things like permissions, securities, user accounts, SharePoint accounts, list views, working with SharePoint Designer, those types of things. You can take full advantage of that using EPM Live. And so with that, you can also create a variety of different custom views tailored to fit your specific needs. And because I'm logged in as Steve Masters, I have access to a whole bunch of views, but I could certainly limit views based on permissions and based on users. You'll also notice that I have the ability to modify these views, and I can create my own additional views based on what is most important to me. But more importantly, you'll notice here that at a glance I can get just a quick visual indication of how our project in our portfolio is performing overall, and it gives me at least some indication as to what I need to pay attention to and when I need to get involved and which projects I need to monitor, right? So what we're going to go ahead and do now is actually go into the Xbox DVD expansion project. And the second part of the demonstration is we're going to go ahead and create a risk. But before I do that, I do want to explain just some of the additional functionality that you gain at the project level when projects are created and you use EPM Live and SharePoint to manage these projects. So real quick, along the workspace navigation bar here, you'll see that this essentially is a workspace dedicated for this particular project. So all things relating to the Xbox DVD expansion project is managed here essentially. So I can quickly get access to all the tasks that are within the project schedule for this particular project. I can also get a list of all the resources that have been assigned to this project and all the tasks here. I also have an issue register, a risk register. Maybe there might be some changes that I want to monitor or I want to be able to track. I can very easily do that here. I can quickly get to status reports or complete a status report if that's something that we have to do on a weekly basis. And I also have a variety of other work lists that I have action to. So I might be keeping track of meeting minutes or actions. I might have some important links that go to other business systems or other SharePoint sites. And I have important contact information if for some reason I need to contact a client, a customer, or a subcontractor that might be contributing to this particular project. And in addition, I've got some other important lists that are important to me. So again, we're fully integrated with the SharePoint functionality. So we have the robust document management capabilities. I have the ability to manage project documents and deliverables. I also have the ability to take my project schedules that I build with an MS Project, and I can publish here directly into this workspace. Now, coming back to the actual task overview, I want to go to the list ribbon here, and I want to show something here real quick. There's really two different ways that you can actually drive your project schedules into the EPM Live solution. I won't actually go through it in great detail, but I do just want to touch on it real quick. We do integrate with the Office platform, specifically Microsoft Project. So for those of you that are currently using Microsoft Project today, you can very easily take those project plans and those schedules and publish it into a SharePoint list or into a SharePoint workspace or a project workspace, very much like what we've done here. And if for whatever reason we need to be able to modify or edit that project, I can easily do that here using Microsoft Project. Okay, so fully integrated. And the other option is we also provide our own work or web-based work planner or scheduling tools. So for those organizations that don't have Microsoft Project installed on their desktops, but they need a scheduling tool to build out these project plans and assign resources and tasks, they can very easily do that using our work planner. It's completely web-based, and there's really nothing to install on the client side. And you get the same, essentially the same fundamental capabilities that you would in Microsoft Project in terms of building schedules, work breakdown structures, defining cost budgets, and assigning resources and milestones and such. Okay. Now, we're going to go back to creating the risk as a continuation of our demonstration, which actually is the second part of our demo. We've chosen to go with the project that's already in flight because we have data in there, and you see that we have just a few other risks in the risk register. And what we're going to go ahead and do now is actually demonstrate how the K2 capabilities around workflow and the workflow processes can not only add value to the project governance process, which is what Michelle had demonstrated just a few minutes ago. We also want to demonstrate how it can actually help with the collaboration process and help proactively help organizations and teams proactively mitigate important risks, which, as I was talking about earlier, was one of the key areas of concern for a lot of the customers that we work with on a day-by-day basis. So we're going to go ahead and create a new risk here, and we're going to call this risk and we're going to go ahead and assign this to Steve Masters. Michelle, I believe that's who we're going to go ahead and assign it to, right? Or is there someone else that we want to assign it to?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then the owner is going
perfect.
to be, should we say Steve Masters too? Would that be all right?
Sure.
Perfect. We're going to go ahead and say that this is a higher priority, that it's active, and the start date, we'll say it's today. And we'd like to have a risk mitigation plan, within 24 hours. And one of the major challenges that a lot of organizations have today is they don't proactively manage risks or implement risk mitigation plans quick enough, and quite often find themselves looking in the rearview mirror. So we want to try to address this as quickly as possible. And with K2's workflow capabilities, we can very easily do that and make sure everyone's fully notified and aware, and that everyone that needs to be involved in this process is involved. And the probability of this is 100%. The impact on a scale of 1 to 5 is 5. And the cost impact, we'll say, is going to be about $25,000. And of course, if we wanted to, we can complete some additional information here, but in the interest of our demonstration, we are just going to go ahead and say save. And that is our virtual fast forward button. And so we've gone ahead and created our new risk. And what I'd like to do now is just hand it back over to Michelle, and Michelle can talk a little bit more about what K2 is doing on the back end to help sort of facilitate the risk mitigation and risk management process.
Great, thanks, Matt. All right, so now that we have a risk created, and as part of our project creation process, I mentioned that each of the lists inside of those projects have been workflow enabled, which means that anytime a risk is created specifically around this demonstration, a workflow got kicked off. So as soon as Matt entered that risk, we saw a workflow kick off behind the scenes. And how do we know we have that? Because we have a task now assigned to us for risk management. And so at this point, I can go ahead and open up that risk and take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and open up my process flow here. And as he was going through the process, he selected who he wanted to assign that risk to. And again, K2 picked up that form field, determined that that's who he should assign it to, and assigned it to that risk. Additionally, as part of that risk assessment process, we did a calculation of that risk. So based on different KPIs that you may have, or different strategies and rules that you might have inside of your processes and how you want to manage risk, you can set up those KPIs. So we calculated a risk based within that KPI and determined that that risk was less than 20% of that KPI. So we went ahead and just sent it to the business sponsor for approval. The other route would have been to the executive sponsor, where we can go ahead and manage that risk and determine if it's a project stopper. If it was a project stopper, we'd actually kick into a separate process. So again, being able to call sub-processes within processes. If there was a project stopper, maybe an entire process needs to start to manage and do some risk assessment on why that's occurring, et cetera. In this case, we wanted to go ahead and just go to the business sponsor, but now we can determine if we need a change request, or we can go ahead and complete that risk as necessary and set it to close. So again, that nice integration with the EPM Live list in that project space, as well as the ability to integrate with line of business systems, as well as kicking off separate processes as well. All right, so I'm going to, again, as usual, leave that window open and just go ahead and take a look at that risk. By clicking on that, I can open it up. And what you see here is now a different form. The nice thing about K2 is it's forms agnostic. In our previous example, we saw InfoPath forms. In this case, we're seeing a SharePoint list form. You can intermingle those types of forms, and again, depending on what task it is, how you want to display that to your user, it's definitely up to you as a designer of your processes on how you want to display these to your users. So in this case, for a very simple example, we're just going to say it's completed and submit that. So that'll move it on our task and go ahead and set it to close in our work list here. We go back into our process flow. You can see that it did set it to close. Again, just a very quick example, but a lot of capability and potential to manage those risks as you're going through your processes. So the last thing I want to show you from a K2 perspective, and I'm just going to close down some of these browser windows, is the K2 process portal. And this is really where you can go in and manage from an administrative perspective some of the items within your processes. And again, it doesn't just have to be portfolio management. It can be any process in your organization. Once you have K2 in your environment, you can really start using that across departments for things, again, like HR and customer onboarding, accounts payable, et cetera. So in this portfolio, or in this platform here, our process portal, you can see your K2 work list again. You will only see tasks that have been assigned to you. You can see all the processes that we currently have running, how many instances, versions, et cetera, as well as a management work list. So in the event that you want to take a look at processes that are of your subordinates, you can go ahead and take a look at those in this management work list, as well as the ability to redirect and delegate those as necessary. So you can redirect them to yourself, or actually send them to someone else if that person is unable to manage that task. In addition, you have the ability to see some of the out-of-the-box reports that do things like user performance, process statistics, activity statistics, as well as process management, setting versions, process rights to different users, the error logs. If there are errors in our process, how do we manage those? So again, it's more of that full platform. It's more than just that pretty design experience. It's allowing you to really manage your business processes. And that's really what K2 is about. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get back to our deck real quickly and just give a quick summary of what we showed today. So regarding portfolio management, we saw how stakeholders have visibility into project requests, allowing for improved decision-making with automatic task allocation and project creation. For risk management, EPM Live and K2 together help stakeholders proactively mitigate those risks by giving accurate, again, visibility into risks and escalations based on thresholds set for that type of a project. So with that said, we hope this webinar gave you some insight into what EPM Live and K2 can do together. We'll now open up the webinar for any questions or feedback. It looks like there's quite a few questions in the question box, so we'll go ahead and take those now.
All right, great, Michelle. Thank you. There was a couple of questions in the Q&A panel that I went ahead and answered. I don't know if you can actually see the answers to them, but there's a few of them that are really more K2 specific. So do you want to start with those ones?
Sure, I will. One question from Mark, thank you. Does K2 support records management in DoD 5015.2? Actually, yes, K2 does support records management. In fact, we have a wizard specifically inside of our designers that supports records management, allowing you to capture documents and put them as part of your records management inside of the SharePoint environment. Also support for case management, another question from Mark, thank you. K2 does support case management. In fact, we have a scenario that we have set up and have done webinars on that show just that, and specifically using that around the SharePoint environment and using SharePoint to manage that. And a really nice presentation that we do with that is around HR onboarding to manage cases, whether that be for onboarding an employee or even insurance policies, managing those cases that come through. How does this integrate with Team Foundation Server and its workflow source control? Again, K2 is .NET based, and with that, we do integrate with Visual Studio, which of course has TFS. So K2 does integrate very well with TFS and its workflow source control. However, K2 as well also contains some source control around the processes that you build. So in that administrative panel that I was showing, there is an option there that K2 actually keeps a copy of the processes, which allows for easier versioning. So if you want to version your processes, you can go back and forth between those, as well as if you want to see what that process looked like maybe 1 year ago, you can download a copy of that process and take a look at that. So again, TFS support as well as K2's built-in source control for those processes. Let me see if I see any other K2 specific ones. There was a question from Craig, and it was, I think, more of a comment potentially. Project approvals were based off of risk and budget data objectively, which is great, but do you aid a business sponsor in assessing risk and calculating cost and benefit for potential projects? Entering a 3 or 5 for risk is still very subjective. And that's a very good point, Craig, and thanks for mentioning that. Now, with what we showed today, again, it was just an example of what you can do with K2 and EPM Live. From a K2 perspective, we could definitely easily integrate with line of business systems, which might bring that information to you on that form. So again, this was just an example of what we might see, but again, you can have K2 integrate with that line of business system, maybe pull some information from that system to determine that calculation based on that risk or budget. So there's a lot of potential for building out processes that are much more complex and advanced with K2 and EPM Live.
Yeah, and in that, to add to that, and in that form specifically, whether it's an InfoPath form or even a K2 form, you can actually add other metrics that you want to track to collect regarding cost and benefit analysis for a potential project. So rather than simplifying it to a on a scale of 1 to 5, you can very easily decompose that into very, very objective data points that you want to be able to track on that specific form, or as that project is created, or as that risk is created. So there definitely is another several layers of granularity that you can get to that both EPM Live and K2 support.
I think there's probably one more question that's K2 related, and is, does K2 support BPMN? And the answer is yes and no. So BPMN has stencils, and so our efforts on that is more integrating with that Visio. So Visio will be that. But we can have a further discussion on that if you'd like, and I believe that was Chris to talk about K2 and the support for BPMN.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess I'll go ahead and jump right in and touch on the EPM Live ones here, Michelle.
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. This actually is it's a combined K2 EPM Live question, so maybe you and I can tag team this one. Can I establish Word templates that can be integrated into the process, such as for a procurement process? So I think what, in lieu of, let's say, an InfoPath form or a K2 form, is there any other way that we can actually integrate maybe Word into that process? Like if they complete a Word template or if they complete a Word document, can that be easily sort of, I know from an EPM Live and a SharePoint perspective, we can easily contain documents and do what we want with them. But from a K2 perspective, I would imagine that, we can very easily facilitate document management approvals and submissions and things like that, right?
Absolutely. And again, within SharePoint and the Microsoft platform, a Word document is almost like another form. So it depends on how you want to use that. Do you want it as part of your process so that different users can view that? If you need to add to it, can they open it up and add to it? Absolutely. We can route them to tasks, point them to that document, etc. Now, if you want to actually add content to that document, K2 does provide some wizards that uses Word services to actually update that Word content from maybe something entered into a form. Maybe they've entered something into a K2 form or an InfoPath form that needs to go into that document. So a K2 can integrate into that document and populate that, as well as even convert it to a PDF document and store it as part of records management later down the line. So again, a lot of flexibility with K2 and what K2 can do, and integration with line of business systems and things even like Excel and Word documents.
Okay. All right, next question is Carlos, and this is a two-part question regarding EPM Live and K2. How does EPM Live K2 work with Project Server PWA? And then the second part of the question, does it have its own timesheet capabilities, or can it integrate with Project Server? So I can take the second question, because the second question does actually support the first question. EPM Live does have its own timesheet capabilities. However, we can actually integrate with Project Server and Project Web Access. In fact, we have several organizations, more than a dozen to be quite frank, that are actually using a combined EPM Live, SharePoint, and Project Server solution. K2, of course, can enable workflows, I believe, on both platforms. Correct, Michelle?
That is correct. In fact, we have a unique way of integrating, whether it's Project Server or those line of business systems, called Smart Objects. That's just the term I'm going to introduce to you. If you're interested in learning more about that, I would definitely invite you to one of our K2 specific webinars. But essentially, we can integrate with Project Server in a two-way street. So we can read and write to Project Server using that Smart Object capability. And again, using the Smart Objects in our K2 Underground, which is a place for our community as well as people that are partners as well as employees, submit comments, questions, and even things like a Smart Object to that community. And I believe there is a Project Server Smart Object on the Underground. So again, it does integrate, and it's just like any line of business system. As long as it allows a communication level, then we're able to integrate with that.
Yeah, and to answer the first question, how does it work with? It can work with Project Server in many different ways. There is a little bit of overlap in terms of things like timesheets and resource centers and project centers, but there is a clear delineation with regards to what role EPM Live can and would play relative to the role that Project Server would play. So a lot of it would just come back to how you're currently using Project Server today and what functionality you're not able to get, and then we can obviously look at EPM Live and see what additional value we can bring without creating unnecessary overlap. So I think understanding the role and the responsibility of the function of Project Server in your project management process would help us clearly identify what value that EPM Live could bring to the table. Okay. And then Patty has a question regarding why K2 EPM Live versus Project Server PWA. There really isn't, I guess for some organizations they would look at it in that sense. We are Microsoft Project Server partners and have been for almost 12, 13 years. And as I was mentioning earlier, there are cases to where K2 EPM Live as well as Project Server and PWA make a lot of sense. And so again, we'd have to understand sort of the way that you go about managing your projects and your portfolio, how Project Server would potentially be used, and then identify, again, the added value that EPM Live would bring. Just off the top, EPM Live provides a lot more flexibility, supports multiple hierarchies within SharePoint. It also provides cross-site collection roll-up capabilities, which Project Server doesn't necessarily support. So if you do have different SharePoint site collections and you have different parts of the business or different countries or different divisions within the organization that have their own site collections, and you want to be able to roll report or roll up site collections across multiple sites, Project Server doesn't necessarily allow you to do that. Our EPM Live product would. So there are cases like that, for example, where Project Server and EPM Live would certainly make a lot of sense for customers like yourself. The next question, which I think I just answered, does EPM Live show risks, tasks across site collections? Yes, we do. We have cross-site collection roll-up capabilities. So not only do we have the ability to roll up risks, tasks, issues, and project-level metrics to the parent site, we can also cross-site collection roll up across multiple parent sites in each site collection. So we can definitely do that. And then the next question is, what template in SharePoint did you use to create the project example? That's a very good question. We actually have a variety of different default templates we use within EPM Live. What's really nice about EPM Live during that project creation process, once it gets approved, you can actually choose what type of project it is, and then essentially choose from a list of templates which template you would like to create, which SharePoint template you would like to create your project workspace. What's also really nice about that is you can have content with that template. So you might have a pre-built project schedule MPP file that goes with that, and you might have a set of lists, custom lists that come populated with that SharePoint template already built out for you. So, so you can use any of the templates that SharePoint provides, or you can take any one of our templates or any template you have and customize it and make that an option in the approval process. And I think that gets down to the end. I think we're just a minute over 10 o'clock, so we'll take one more question and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, that's probably about right.
Okay. So what is the advantage of using K2 Portfolio Management versus Microsoft Project Server Portfolio Suite? So yeah, again, that's a really great question. That's probably a question I'd like to take offline because, again, to some of the earlier questions, there are obviously a lot of capabilities that we can bring to the table as it relates to Microsoft Project Server. So we really would like to look at how the organization is currently using Project Server today to really sort of delineate or crystallize the value that we can bring. Again, it isn't necessarily us versus them. It's really these two products work well together and they integrate well, and there's a lot of cases for why you want to do that. But there are some overlaps, so we'll have to figure out what role EPM Live and K2 would play relative to what role Project Server would play. Okay. And then I don't know if you want to take one last question here, Michelle. It's regarding pricing around K2 and EPM Live, being that I'm sure there's probably some folks here that are interested. I think it might make sense to maybe close with some general pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. From a K2 perspective, it can be either priced by user or by server, and really it probably makes more sense to have that discussion with you to determine the best suitable option for you. And just quickly, real quick, Matt, I've just kind of put the slide up for our contact information so that we can get in touch with you or you can get in touch with us regarding any additional questions as well. Okay, wonderful. And then from an EPM Live standpoint, we do have similar licensing models. We do have a per server model, and we also have a per user, and then we also have a SaaS offering, software as a subscription. So if you don't have SharePoint today, but you would like to take advantage of EPM Live and K2, we do have some options where SaaS can be a great cost-effective offering where you can take advantage of both EPM Live and K2. So with that, we are a few minutes past the hour. We do appreciate the extra few minutes here that you are spending with us, and we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. Again, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available in about 24 hours. For those of you that are still here with us, you should see an email here in a couple hours. If not, definitely by tomorrow this time. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and thank Michelle for all your hard work in putting this together, and we look forward to talking to each and every one of you in just a little bit. Thanks again for joining us. Absolutely. Thanks, Matt.